Try that again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Pinal County Board of Supervisors, May 14th, 2025 special session. The first item on the agenda is a presentation and discussion of the repeal of all the GIS data sales. Who wants to present that?
Good morning, Chairman Miller, Vice Chairman McClure, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sarah Hess, GIS Supervisor for the Information Technology Services Department, and I am here today to present on our interest in repealing our GIS data fee schedule and moving to an open data portal. The interest in repealing our GIS data fees comes from a couple of main factors. Right now, the current process for the public to obtain our GIS data is that they submit a GIS data request form, they submit their payment, our staff then processes the payment, processes the custom GIS data order, and then delivers that data to the customer. Currently, our customers are only able to purchase data packages with our current fee schedule, even if they're only interested in an individual layer. Our customers can experience a 2 to 3 business day wait time while we process their payment and their data order. Our data purchasing includes a one-time cost and a one-time data delivery. So if they wanted updated data, they would have to repurchase the data again. And as fast as we are growing and changing, very shortly after we deliver the data, it's already out of date for the customer. We believe that by repealing our GIS data fees and moving to an open data portal, that it'll free up staff time as well as provide better customer service to our constituents. I have listed, many Arizona counties and Pinal jurisdictions have already gone to an open GIS data portal. I have listed those as well as hyperlinked those in the documentation so that way you're able to review them. This page outlines our data packages, what data is included, as well as the sale costs. I did want to bring your attention to our parcel data. Our fee schedule only allows us to distribute the parcel boundary line and the parcel number. All other parcel information, such as ownership or mailing information, is distributed through the assessor's office through a separate fee schedule. So that data is not going to be included in this repeal. This is a continuation of our data packages. I have included our GIS data sale history. Our highest earning year was fiscal year 2020-2021. Was $17,325 in data sales. We currently already have the technology in place to move to an open data portal using Esri ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Open Data. The data that would be hosted on that portal would be the exact same data that we are currently selling today. The customer would have the option to download the individual layers or the complete data package at their convenience at any time with no cost. And it is our goal that this portal would be updated weekly with an automated process. And that is all that I had to present today. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions?
Maybe just a comment.
Sure.
I mean, it makes sense to me that you would do that because the revenue that you're bringing in is not worth the cost of the staff time.
Correct.
So, right. Seems like,
or the delay for the customer and having to wait for that data.
Everybody's used to information now, so
correct.
Why not? Sure.
And especially as fast as we are going. We get a lot of inquiries and why we don't have the open data or how that. They purchase the data, and then we're growing so fast that the data is already out of date within a couple of weeks.
Sure. No, it makes sense to me. I think it's a great idea. My other question.
Sure.
So your goal is to update it weekly?
So it will be updated weekly. We are working towards that to be automated, so that way there's no staff time included for that portal.
Well, that would be nice.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Surtee, did you have something?
So this isn't exactly what we're talking about, but we don't often get to talk to you folks. I mean, it's a big county and we're spread very wide. But you're all things mapping and documenting, et cetera. One of the tools that I always wish I had is, and that's with code enforcement, is to be able to look at properties in quicker time. Not so much real time like a police chase or whatever, but sometimes we all have the big screens in our office now and we can go on and somebody comes in about a complaint and we're looking at a satellite picture from 2 years ago.
Correct.
And in the meantime, they've pulled in 5 motorhomes and 27 other cars. Is there some way that we can get a different system where it's updated more often, or can we look at different satellite views, because it would be helpful for all of our districts when we have issues like this? Or somebody's ordered a wash here and you can't see it. It would be nice to be able to come in and look at that in quicker time.
Purchasing aerial photography is very, very expensive, especially for a county of our size. We do have a contract in place with a company called Eagle View. Our next flight is scheduled for this fall. Currently, we're flying every 2 to 3 years. So that's our current schedule right now that we have in place. But it is very costly to fly at a mapping resolution our entire county, or even our growth areas of our county.
So with law enforcement, do you assist with that, or do they have their own separate system?
So they have access to our aerial imagery, and I believe that they also have a drone program.
Okay. Because I don't think that we should be able to snoop in people's backyards, but like I said, to see damage to properties, et cetera, a lot happens in 1 or 2 years. So
Correct, yeah. We use the aerial imagery for many different sources or for different reasons. With 911, with code enforcement, I know the assessor's office uses it for change detection. We use it for damage assessments after wildfires and things like that. So we do use the imagery. But right now, we're just currently only doing the flights between every 2 to 3 years.
Okay. So, colleagues, that's something that's a useful tool for us.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
photo imagery, they have to stitch it together, and it gets very time
Correct.
consuming.
So they
and
stitch
that's
it
where
together.
trying
And
to-
we usually fly it at anywhere between 6-inch to 3-inch resolution.
Ooh.
And then they also put it to the real world. So that way it matches up with our data. So it's very costly to do that.
Time consuming and costly. Supervisor Violito.
Sorry.
Add a little Spanish to it.
Thank you for that. It sounds like a great program, and I'm glad we're going to be going to. But I just had a question about, so the old cost to the new cost, will it cost the constituents more or less?
For the data,
Yeah.
it'll be free. We're hoping to repeal all of our fees and go to free.
Free's
is our
good.
hope, yes.
Great.
I know that there has been some research in the past on parcels for mapping future water use, and there's been difficulty getting some of that information. Hopefully, this act will help free that up and make this, more available for. I don't know if that's proper English, but anyway, so that they can determine where they're going to need to put in infrastructure in the future, because you try to stay ahead of all that stuff. I think it's great that we're going this route. So, anything else? All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for the presentation. Item number 2 is executive session request to move into an exec session for items 2, 3, and 4.
So, Mr. Chair, I move that we recess the special session of the Board of Supervisors and convene the executive session.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. And
We can, right?
well, yeah, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do here in just a second. I know. That's why I said that. Okay, everyone, can I get a motion to come out of exec session?
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn executive session and reconvene the special session of the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. We are going to adjourn. On agenda item number 5, we will be heard in the ceremonial room located on the second floor. So we're going to recess for 10 minutes to allow facilities to change. So reconvene, and we'll gavel up upstairs in about 10 minutes. Okay? You good?
Yes.
Okay, we're reconvening the special session. We're now convened in the ceremonial room on the second floor. Gavel, bang, to order. And announce item number 5, which is this is an agenda item. The agenda item number 5 will be heard in the ceremonial room, second floor, and who is presenting here, then repeat. Yeah, you. Been on vacation.
I've been.
Have to get back to
I've been on
Okay.
vacation.
All
And
right, so
yeah, so give me a moment.
you can explain to everybody what
Yeah.
we're doing here. That would be great.
I went up here to help explain it because he knows more about this thing than I do.
Here, too, sure.
There you go. Sure, Cap.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig. I'm actually past mayor of Cascadende, but also currently the president and CEO of Pinal Partnership. And as part of Pinal Partnership's goals, one of our tasks is transportation initiatives. So as past chair of the PRTA, which is the Pinal Regional Transportation Authority, we did a lot of work to try and build a regional transportation plan for the county. And as most of you probably already aware, some repeating history, but we got sued, we lost the suit, and so we're kind of back to square one in terms of a regional plan. And so my thought was, after having experienced the ASU Decision Theater, which is what this display is here today, this is their portable version. They have 2 permanent versions up in Phoenix. One's at the ASU campus, and the other's at Helios campus up in Phoenix. And they are an amazing, I'll call it an AI system because it really takes data and puts it into one place, and then you can ask some scenarios of that data. So it will help us, I think, build a plan for the county, which is really what this is about. This is an opportunity for us to partner with ASU, partner with the county, all our municipal partners, and as the head of the Pinal Partnership, and having my past history, I've kind of taken it upon my group to try and help push that forward, right? Obviously, it has to be in cooperation with everybody, and especially everyone in this room, including our legislators. And thank you both for being here. Teresa was a big part of this push when we initially started this back in December, actually. And so she helped put together kind of the first group when we went and visited the ASU Decision Theater. And I know Rich was there, maybe a couple other people in the room were there, myself included. And so this is an opportunity really to see what the capabilities are firsthand, again, in a portable version of their decision theater, but also think of it as we sit here, think of it, how can we use this system to build a transportation plan for the county? That's the ultimate end goal, is to come up with something that is data-driven, not individually picked, whether Casa Grande wants it or whether AJ wants it. It's something that is data-driven based on all the data that we can put into this system. And so that's really just setting the stage for what the purpose of this is. And Chelsea and her team, and I'll let her introduce her team, but Chelsea's from ASU. She is the kind of the executive. What is your title?
Director of Strategy and Impact.
There you go. Director of Strategy and Impact. And so again, using AI, using data to tell us where do we need to build our roads? Where are the roads of the future? This is this whole PRTA and all of this stuff that we want to do. It's a 40-year plan, 40, 50-year plan. It's a long-term plan, but we have to start somewhere. Right? So best we start now, I think, and we start working on it. I know we're working on it, but kind of maybe come up with a 30,000-foot plan that we can build to. So
I guess with that, we get Chelsea.
Chelsea, good job. Good decision.
Well, welcome everyone. So as they mentioned, I'm with ASU's Decision Theater. I'm joined by some of my team, Sean and Brandon, who will be helping me with some of the tech stuff, and Natalie, who's one of our project managers and has been with this whole relationship. We have 7 wonderful screens, as you can see here, so we're going to try and use all of them so you get your visits worth with us. I think one of the best ways we can kind of go about it is I'll show you an example of something we've done somewhere else. It won't be on a transportation topic, but I think you'll be able to make the connections of how we bring complexity together, how we can talk about a lot of different systems at once and make it really interactive and engaging. But we'll do that and look through, go behind the scenes up to how we get there, what Decision Theater does, and the different methodologies that come together to make this happen. So behind me, you're looking at 7 screens of a model we did for the island of Hawaii. We can dig into this more towards the end if there's a lot of interest in the specific topics. But for now, I just want to highlight it as one of our 7 screen models, which means everything's connected. A decision made on one screen will impact all the other screens. So on the first one, we can go ahead and pick a region. So we can switch it over to Mogu, select an area. And as he does this, you'll see all of the other screens kind of update around. And then this kind of follows a pretty standard narrative flow for us, in the sense that the first few screens are going to give you really rich data insights into the world as it currently is. Based on historical and current data and the trends of what we anticipate in the future, this is what we can expect. Current snapshot. So we can hover over these things. It's all interactive. You can dive in and see the exact specifics between all of these ideas. Would you mind selecting just a different region, and just for the sake of seeing everything update in real time across the board? So everything's very unique. Once we get the current snapshot of the world, then there's a few screens dedicated to what other types of futures might we want. Yes, that's where we're headed if we do nothing. Where might we want to head instead? And then the final screen gets us at what would it take to get there. So if this is the current reality, if we have a conversation negotiating where we want to go, now where do we end up? Okay, so now I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to pull up the slides that help explain who we are a little bit more, and we'll go through those, the methodologies that get us there. Our tagline is setting the stage for informed decisions. I like to point this out because I think it helps us get past a couple common misconceptions. First of all, we are not a theater troupe, and we are not just a facility. We're not just the screens where people can come in and throw whatever their own little game or their own little movie up on the screen. These are things that we create to help set the stage for a really informed conversation. The other piece is we don't design things that will tell you what decision to make. This does not guide you toward any particular conclusion. And if it's something that can be solved by a simple optimization model, or if you think that there's a way to, all we have to do is optimize for this and the problem is solved, that's not where we shine. We shine where things are a lot more complex. There's a lot more things to take into account and trade-offs to be considered. So we work kind of in that gray area of a lot of different objectives that you're trying to optimize for, and how do you consider them all at once? So go ahead. So we have a really unique position in the university, being way more outward focused and partnering with municipalities and companies out in the real world to make sure we're affecting change. So everything we develop is very specifically to be a tool for action and get out of, talking in circles around something forever. We want to make sure that we progress the conversation to different action points. And then to that end, we found the most effective way to do that is through co-development processes. So this is bringing together a lot of different voices, a lot of different experts from different angles of the issue, and having them work with us to help develop this thing as we go. It's an iterative process. Everything's vetted with these groups throughout, so that by the time we land on a final version of the tool, people can just get down to the business of decision making and using it without having, a list of questions they need answered about how it was put together. I know myself, I approach a lot of data stuff with a certain level of suspicion that I think is well earned in today's society, where we've all seen charts presented in ways that can be a little bit misleading. There's always questions about, well, why did you use this data set? Why didn't you use this one? So this co-development process helps us handle all of those things as we go and make sure it's all done super transparently so people can trust those final outcomes to be able to use them in their decision making. A lot of our projects we do is what we consider a regional transformation project. And frankly, the way the partnership with Pinal is envisioned would fall under this heading. And it's because we view these items as systems that are complex in themselves that also interact with a lot of other complex systems. So even though the main focus for this one is the transportation system, which on this chart would be under the technosphere category at the bottom there, the built environment, we realize that that doesn't only impact transportation, right? That impacts economic development in the region, what businesses want to be there or not. It impacts evacuation routes. It impacts supply chain flows when stuff gets shut down. It impacts how many people want to move to that area or not. Health in the area, air quality, all of these things are different systems that are connected. And what we try and do at Decision Theater is handle them in that integrated way to approach the topic in a more comprehensive, holistic view so that we understand the implications of our decisions, not only on the system we're looking at, but on all those other systems that make up the region. So the main thing I'm going to point out here is the three main pillars that make up what we do. So already you've probably gotten your head around the fact that we do a lot in data analysis and modeling, and we do a lot with advanced technology. The third piece that isn't as recognizable from the get-go is what we call human-centered design. And this is basically acknowledging the fact that these decisions that we're talking about, the level of complexity we're talking about, are not going to be made by data alone. These are human decisions. It's people getting together and deciding what needs to happen next, what they want to do. And so a lot more comes into it than just the data alone. So what do we need to do in these tools and the way that we present them and the way that we facilitate conversations to make that more possible and more beneficial experience for everyone? So this includes things like, what are the different kind of perspectives, agendas, personalities in the room in discussing this topic? This is things about how data fluent is the group that's going to be using this, so we can match it to make it useful for them. Who gets along, who doesn't? How do we bring in different groups to facilitate a productive collaboration on this topic and help all the sides speak to each other more effectively? We can go ahead to the next one. Real quick, I won't stay on this super long, but this gives you 3 more examples of 7 screen tools we've developed. And I just point this out to show the variety in the types of ways we approach these problems. So you already saw one that's kind of dashboard-like. We've got one up here that's super data technical, lots of charts and interactivity there. This is a comparative study where you can pick two very customized groups that you can customize based on either region or demographic information, make a decision and see how it would impact those two groups in distinct ways. The last one is a more gamified approach. This is kind of a choose your own adventure type of model. You're given a scenario, you make a decision, the world plays out for a certain amount of time and tells you what the impacts of your decision ended up being on that world, gives you a chance to make another decision. All of these types of things are possible, but it's all custom tailored to support whatever discussion is actually happening. The other piece of that is we do a lot of work to figure out what that conversation is. So here it's on the main focus of the transportation system, right? So not only all of the logistics of what is being considered in that conversation, but one of the things we do is we ask, what are the common stumbling blocks in that conversation? And what are the common soapboxes in that conversation? Because both of those things have the tendency, when these things are being discussed, either of those can kind of sideline the conversation. It can trip people up, get them off track, or the conversation can just stale out. So by considering those things ahead of time, we're able to build into the tools ways to approach those. So really quick, a brief example of a stumbling block to make this tangible. We are working on a project about the water system. So instead of transportation system, this is the water system. One of the data sets we've identified as being useful for that is river and spring source flow rates, right? Like at what rate is water entering these different systems? Pretty crucial for trying to do any type of scenario modeling around the water system. But through this co-development process and listening to a bunch of people, we've realized, frankly, I don't know if there's a more contentious data set I've ever come across. No one thinks it's accurate. Half of the people think the numbers are super inflated and they should actually be lower. Half the people think the numbers are way too low and they need to be higher. So before, in a more technocratic approach, without the human-centered design, you would have two options. Either we're going to include it because that's what the data says and everyone can just come to terms with that, which wouldn't help because then it's not satisfying that trust issue in the tool. And so now they can't trust what it was built on, so they can't trust it for their decision making. And we might as well not have built the thing in the first place. The second one is to not include that data at all because no one can agree on whether it's accurate or the extent to which it's accurate. And so we're just going to have to make do. But then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you're taking away this really essential component of the system. So from a human-centered design perspective, what we do is we include that data set, but with options on the screen for the group to discuss about how they want that data set to be treated. Do we want to use the numbers as they are? Do we want to increase them by 30%, decrease them by 50%? Let's work it out. We'll try an experiment. Set the stage how you want, make a decision that you're considering, and see the impact. This accomplishes a few things. One, it helps us get past that stumbling block, right? Because we're not just bickering over whose numbers are right. We're able to play out the scenario. Two, we're instantly able to go back through and run it again within seconds using a different assumption. So we did it 50% higher last time. Let's do it 50% lower this time. Make the same decision and see what the impact would be. And now we know what range of impact we can expect depending on the variability of that data set. This accomplishes a lot of things. It builds in a lot of trust to the tool. It's very transparent. You can test out different things. You can also see how significant those things are or are not within the system you're considering. So a lot of times those levers we build in to make it transparent, by the time you run it through, you realize at the end of the day, once all the other factors are considered as part of that complex system, when you make such and such decision, it didn't actually matter. Maybe 50% higher numbers to 50% lower numbers over here, really only the difference of 0.01% on the actual impact. But that's useful information because now we know we can act, we can move forward without needing to waste time figuring out the precision of that. So human-centered design in a nutshell. We'll go ahead with more. So just really quick, in-house at DT, we have these various teams. All of these teams, we have a staff of over 60. They're overseen by professionals, and then we have teams of students at various levels who are being trained in these things as we go. You'll notice not on this list are things like water systems or transportation systems. And that's because we maintain subject matter expertise in creating these tools and facilitating the engagements. But then we reach out to the actual experts in those very precise fields across ASU and frankly other universities as well. And we can plug into the expertise that's already there. So we can take the most advanced transportation modeling, risk analysis, evacuation modeling, all of these things, and integrate them together into one comprehensive tool that you need to use. So as Craig mentioned, we have our main hub facility is in Tempe on the ASU campus. We also have a location in Washington, D.C. It's a block and a half away from the White House. So we have, are able to convene a lot of policymakers there. And then we have this portable setup. There is one of these full-time in Hawaii. We do a lot of work over there. One full-time in Berlin for our work in Europe, and one now in Los Angeles as well. And then we keep a few for occasions like this, where we drive around the state and can set it up in different places around Arizona. This is really important to us because it gives us the ability to go where those conversations are happening, include a lot more people than might otherwise be able to be involved, because we actually go out to all of these different communities. Can even be shown outside. Not a lot of projector screens can pull that off, but ours will work even in high light environments. So we've even been able to go out into pretty rural communities, pick a big park and set up and reach out to a lot more people that way as well. So there's a lot of possibility here. We just need power access and ideally Wi-Fi, but we've found workarounds for that as well. Okay, one more. So this is a quick summary of everything we've already talked about. We can do this a couple different ways. We can go straight into a deep dive of the model and go there and then take questions after all of that. But if there's any pressing questions already at this point, I'm happy to take them now. I know that was a lot of information.
It would be great to go through, to walk through what the system can do for people who've not seen it yet.
Yeah. Okay, want to pull up Hawaii Workforce again? So back to this one. So this was created for the island of Hawaii. We were working with them to help them make decisions for a more resilient life in the future. When we started having these conversations with them, one of the more pressing things was they had just witnessed Maui go through the wildfires there that devastated not only the physical infrastructure, but it kind of ripped out the economic floor for them because they're so dependent on tourism, and it revealed that dependency. So a lot of people were out of work, a lot of companies had to shut down. And so when we were on Hawaii Island, they were asking us, how dependent are we on tourism? Like, we know it's a big thing here. Are we as vulnerable as they are? And if so, what can we do about it? So that's what this tool was designed to facilitate conversation for. So on this screen, you can pick a region anywhere on the island. We can do it as small as census tract, but we found, unsurprisingly, not many people know what census tracts they belong to. And so we aggregated it up into areas called moguls, which is the way they divide their island into their natural communities. And so you can pick a specific one, give insights into the people who live there, the workforce, and how that compares to the island as a whole. So you can start to see the pockets where, there's either more college degrees or higher unemployment rates or those types of things. And then we start looking at the occupations in that area paired with industry strength. And so the short version is, can you click on Kona? So Kona's top industry is accommodation and food services, which is the tourism industry. So we talked with them a lot about if that warranted enough of a dependency from their economy that they wanted to kind of look into bringing or elevating a different industry in its place. This gave them a way to look at, so anything above the dotted line is an industry that is uniquely strong in that area compared to the rest of the nation. Anything to the right of the dotted vertical line are industries that are expected to grow in the next 10 years. So they could pretty quickly identify where they might be uniquely situated already to capitalize on a niche they had to expand a particular industry. Here we start getting at what other industries they may want to move into. So hypothetically, we've decided we're too dependent on tourism. We want to emphasize something else. Which industry should that be? This gives a list just based on the suitability of the workforce who lives there with the skill sets that match that industry. So if the only thing you cared about was workforce alignment, this is the order of industries you would want to start paying attention to. But then we have conversations. Is that the only thing we care about? Or what else should we be considering? So literally, we ask groups all around the island, if you knew your county government was going to make a decision on a new industry to kind of more intentionally pursue, what would you want them to be considering as a part of that discussion? And we heard back from a lot of people. A very common one is wage. What wage does that industry typically pay? And will it be enough for me to afford to actually live here? Another one is environmental concerns. So what's the greenhouse gas emission for that industry? Typically, what would be the long-term impact? Another couple pretty unique ones that we were surprised to hear and pleased to hear and were able to then build into the model were two down here. One was, how likely am I to be happy working in this industry? The other one was, how likely am I to feel like I'm contributing to my society by working in this industry? So we found data on that, we built it out, and then this middle one kind of gave them a playground where they could explore those different trade-offs and see which ones they wanted to kind of prioritize in their conversation. So the right half is always going to be those industries that are most suitable based on the skill set of the workforce. But we get to change what shows up on the vertical. So right now it's showing wage. Now we just flipped over to satisfaction. So being happy in the job. So if we just wanted to care about that, let's go over here and see this one. So it's a little less suitable. We would need to like upskill our workforce, right? But it maxes out, you know, as happy as you can be. It's educational services. So if we choose that one, now you see where it falls relative to the other industries you could have chosen. So not just the impact of that particular industry, but the trade-offs you're considering of what other industries you're kind of giving up by going that route. And you can see the one we picked highlighted in teal while the others are gray. And then you get a screen of the gap analysis. So in this very specific region, dealing with the people who live there and the skills they possess, if we wanted to go into the education industry, this is what we would need to upskill. So now this kind of pivoted. We took a couple different routes with the communities there. One was the short term, I'm going to call it a Band-Aid vision. Like, we're just too dependent on this right now. We need to start diversifying what industries we have right away. How can we do that? Then there was a more aspirational conversation. In 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, with an industry that we want to have here, based on what we say our values are. And now what does that mean for our education system, for how we might want to change the curriculum, how universities might want to do different certificating programs, how commercial enterprises might want to do certain upskilling workshops, that type of a thing. So this was designed to help them answer that question and ask better questions. So the next one coming out of this, there was a lot of interest in this. It helps them do a lot. A short version is we're still in this project with them. It's an ongoing thing, the same way we would hope to have an ongoing relationship now. One iteration helps you ask a first round of questions, see what would be most useful in that next round. they saw this. A really common one was, okay, I think we want to go after fill in the blank. It's going to take a certain amount of land to do that. We are going to have to, let somebody, start up a factory over here or put in an information headquarters over here. Our next task with them is designing a tool where they will be able to locate the footprint of a particular industry on their island, very specific, like this plot of land type of idea, and it would be integrated with the power system, the water treatment system, the transportation system. So they would instantly be able to see, can our infrastructure support this already as it is? At what point do we need to say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. We would love to have you, company XYZ, come set up shop here. But if you do, we're going to need a water treatment plant. Like, at what point do those different negotiations start to happen? Even things as far as housing, and if there would be enough housing in the area to support the workers. So that's the next iteration of this one. For the purposes of Pinal and moving into the transportation conversation, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I'll have, if you can pull up the Explore tool. This is a tool we used to help get us to this one. So it's what I call a stepping stone tool. And it's also focused on Hawaii, but I'll show you some maps we did for them that's about the infrastructure systems. So the cool thing about this one is it is technically a single screen tool. You're just seeing it duplicated 7 times. And so we can put up whatever we want next to each other to start comparing and seeing how these different things connect. So for them, we have information on the power grid. We can just pull up a few. And we can dive into each of these things, start having conversations about where, the problem points might be, where the hunches of solutions exist, what things you would want to see merged together. And so in theory, something very similar might be created for Pinal, where it's just, this has a couple thousand different data layers in it on all sorts of different topics, as you can see. And we can start creating something like that with, the transportation system, but also commute flow rates and over a period of time, like at different points in the day of what's happening. Whatever other systems we want, and then we can start putting them side by side to start integrating them to figure out what that final tool would need to include all together and brainstorm what scenarios are most pressing. And again, a lot of what we do is done more through partnership than project. We do stuff in anticipation that there will be multiple phases. So it's a matter of what do we do first? Then what do we add in? What do we add in? Everything we do is done very modular and layered approach. So the longer we're with something, the more robust we can make it and more of those facets we can bring into the conversation. So hypothetically, even just with the transportation system, we can simultaneously parse out the things that are, there's certain road projects that are already kind of planned and identified or in discussion, and also handle things that are a hypothetical new idea of like, what would it take to do this? We can do that on a very GIS-based way where you're literally interacting with the map interface and drawing lines and drawing squares and widening roads and all of this. And we can also do it temporally. So you can plan out at different years what different things would start taking effect and see how that would impact a variety of things over time, from those traffic flow rates to the economy, what businesses might be more induced to come, all of those types of things. So I'll pause there and then we can just take it wherever questions lead us. How does that sound?
So one of the cool things that I liked about this particular system, and maybe it was one of the things that got my attention when I first saw it, was the fact that you could draw, and we did this as an exercise, draw a power grid or a power plant, and then it would bring up, okay, so we want to put this power cord or this power tower in this place, right here in the middle of 11 Mile Corner. we'll say. And then they would be able to bring up, okay, who owns the property? Is it private or is it public? What about species and plants? Are we going to have problems with endangered species? And then what would the range be? And then sort of some of those very things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And I think that when we start thinking about transportation, we'll take, I think is, what was that loop, Craig? Was it the one that would come out of Maricopa and loop it?
505.
The 505. So there's a vision out there about the 505 that's starting in Maricopa and those folks in Maricopa being able to get out of Maricopa without going through the 347, without going through the Casa Grande Maricopa Freeway. It would actually loop into the I-10. And so that was kind of an interesting idea. And I think what this tool is able to do is take those interesting ideas and see. And I will go out on a limb, and I know we're being taped, and I have to be careful with my words not to offend. But if we had done this with I-11, we would have been able to see some of especially the lawsuits that would have been created down in Pinal, down in Pima County, with it going right through the national forest or whatever that is, and we would have been able to see had we drawn that map. Hey, the state owns this land, and you're going to open up for lawsuits because of the cactus, because of the wildlife. Maybe we could there's another piece of property over to the left or over to the right or just to the southeast or wherever that's private property owned. And I think that's where the road transportations get so bogged up with the lawsuit. Is there something like that we can show? I don't know if we can or cannot.
I don't know if we have which time we're allowed to take up. It would be very good. We'll see if we can get it pulled up for you. We're also doing something similar. So as they pull that up, the tool that Martinez is referring to is something that we refer to as AZ Smart. It's a much older tool. We developed this one a long time ago. You'll be able to tell just by the visuals. It's a little outdated in how it looks, but it's still very powerful. And this was focused specifically on where to place a solar power plant in the state of Arizona. It has a few pretty powerful things that I'll point out that she mentioned directly. The other piece of that is we are undertaking a new project for the power system of Arizona as a whole right now that has a lot of these capabilities, but instead of looking just at solar, it looks at a very comprehensive, exhaustive list of all the ways you can generate power and lets you mix and match and plan all of that out. So the way, we use things to load here. Short version, I'll be quick with this one. The way this one works is on the first screen, you get to make custom policy choices about the way the tech is developed, what it's capable of, and what the regulatory environment was when it was created. Highly, more detailed. Right now, it's just set the defaults of what is typically used. Then you can go into the map of Arizona. As you can tell, highly interactive. You get to choose anywhere you want to place a solar power plant. And you get to draw a polygon wherever you want to propose that plant.
So I think there's one at 11 Mile Corner that's already there.
Well, we can just pick just something else close.
Yeah.
Which is the exact same. But while he's drawing that, you'll see the rest of these things update. The most intriguing one, frankly, the most powerful aspect of this, is it plugs into this live feed of the transmission grid of Arizona. This is a live map. I'm not sure if you can see it from where you're at, but there's actually arrows that indicate the flows if it's going in or out, these types of things. And whatever he draws, is it? So as soon as he draws that, we'll get to see it update on here. And so this little red dot is the power plant we just drew. and it tells you where it would most naturally link into the transmission grid as it currently exists. And then it gives you some information. So right off the bat, the ones that Rep. Martinez referred to, and there's 2 endangered species in this area. They are listed as a 1B. This is useful. It means a headache and a lot of paperwork. But if it was a 1A, that's like, you might as well not even try. So it helps identify locations kind of quickly. The sloped land is another really important one, especially for solar efficacy and construction methods. All of that kind of feeds into over here, this top left corner is the other important part. So it tells us what peak production would be, also how much of that would be usable. For this one that we just drew, it quite impressively is the same. Everything it makes, we would also be able to use. That is very rarely the case. Usually it's like a fraction, like a third or a fourth, depending on where you draw the polygon. And it can vary on reasons why, but the most common one is stuff to do with the transmission grid and what the capacity is at the place that you would be plugging into. There's certain areas, like you can already see the orange bubbles down here, is where the grid is nearing capacity, where it wouldn't be able to transport anymore, even if you created it. And then these 2, I know we're not going to be able to, read them because it's kind of tiny, but basically what these 2 show is the cost of doing the exact one you just proposed relative to trying to build other ways of producing that power. So a wind farm the same size, a nuclear facility the same size, whatever it may be. On the economic level, cost per kilowatt hour, and then the environmental carbon dioxide emission per. Very powerful. You get this idea of how the GIS interconnects, and you can see all the different impacts. The other aspect of this in the new iteration we're doing that's being developed right now is very similar flow, but it allows you to consider all the different types of power generation. And the way this one was designed, you can draw the polygon for the solar anywhere you want, which is a great perk, but you're flying blind, right? It's like what your assumption is of the state, whatever you happen to know about where it's good, but the map itself doesn't give you any indication of what a good or bad location might be. The new version we're developing, whatever type of power plant you choose, and again, you could imagine the same thing working for different types of transportation. The map will change to highlight areas it would be exceptionally good and highlight areas where, based on the current regulatory environment, it would be forbidden. So maybe it can't be constructed within so many miles of fill in the blank. And so instead of just drawing wherever, you would pick, I want to build a solar power plant, or I want to build a new highway. And the land color would update to show where you can't even consider it versus where you could and it would go well versus like neutral territory that would require a bit of work. So that's where we're headed, but it would have that very similar tie-in in how it could be used with the transportation system for Pinal. And we can, embarking on the project would be these rounds of co-development, like I mentioned. So a lot of different perspectives to figure out what scenarios are most pressing, what things should be considered. The things I've mentioned so far are just things that got brought up in the first few conversations we've had with the group. But we could feasibly do things like, what would happen if you added an extra lane to this highway? What would happen if you put a whole new highway that hasn't been discussed here? What would, and not just what would happen, but what would that mean for the economic development? What would that mean for evacuation routes? What would that mean for, supply chain plan Bs when something gets shut down?
Would you also be able to include what it looks like 30 years from now, 40 years from now? Because a lot of complaints that I'm hearing, particularly about the I-10, is by the time we get that widened for 3 lanes, we'll be ready for 6.
Yeah. Yes. And so we can do it temporally in the projections and also in the time scale of when the different things are released. So we can help model what would be needed in 30 years and work backwards to what we should be constructing. We can also say, if you constructed this at year 2027, that by this time you would need to expand it. All of those things can go in. We can do environmental impacts of those things, how it would change air quality in different regions.
You take into effect land use, even within our municipalities, and we all have general plans.
Mhm.
The general plans have land use in them.
Yeah,
That information is
completely.
valuable in terms of where roads could go or should go.
Another thing that we've done on a similar topic, you mentioned everybody having their different general plans. We have a lot of experience bringing those together as well. So not to overemphasize the power example, but since we're talking about it already, for that one, there's a lot of different plans, right? So the state has certain objectives when it comes to power and a plan they want to see. APS has their strategic plan of what they're going to do. SRP has their strategic plan of what they're going to do. Different municipalities have their piece of it. One of the things we're doing for that project is bringing all of those plans together to show how those objectives feed off each other and where there's synergies and frankly where there's conflict. And well, if you achieve that, then this won't be achieved. Or if you achieve this, versus where they have a similar objective in mind so that we can build all of that into the system.
Yeah, Chelsea, that whole idea is to take all the municipal plans and the county plan and bring it into one spot. So in that one spot, now we get the whole picture. And to your point, see what effect, if we do something here, how does that affect something here? And the only way we can do that is if we have everybody's data. Right? If we can bring everybody's data together, it gives us a huge amount of power in terms of trying to design something that would be good for the future.
Well, and one of the cool things about it too is that it can continue to grow.
Right.
So whoever's willing to come to the table, whoever's willing to share that data immediately, we can address certain topics with that. And then over time, just keep adding to it as more groups want to participate, as more scenarios come up that need to be considered. So, right now, maybe it focuses on this, what if this particular road, what if this particular road. But once it's constructed, it's constructed. And so then, 2 years ago, to be like, oh, actually, this is being proposed. Let's run a hypothetical of that for the system. It can continue to adapt to whatever the needs of that conversation are. It can also learn from itself. So we can, over that long period of time, we can create decision support for something that's being proposed and have predicted analytics of the impact of that. For the ones that actually end up happening, we can also put that data of what the impact actually ended up being, how those things actually played out, and it continues to get smarter in those predictives as it goes.
And the beauty of it is that you can look at it on a macro level and you can look at it on a micro level. So I've observed it from the education standpoint. It literally can get down to the school, or it can look at the county, or it can look at the school district, or it can look at the state.
Yes.
Right? So it's that macro down to the individual spot.
A question over here.
So, it's great, and I love it.
Yes.
It's got to be a big cost. And where does something like this, how does it get funded? Is this something that ASU is going to do for us? Is it a long-term project that you'll continue to work with us on
Do
it?
you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
Oh, you can start, but I have an answer as well, but I'm really
you give your
curious.
answer. You give
I
your
want to
answer.
hear your answer. You work with ASU.
No, you give your answer first.
Okay, so for us, the most important part is the partnership. So ASU cares a lot about being of benefit to the communities that we exist in and helping our communities thrive, and being very actionable in it. So we see this as a worthwhile partnership to put quite a bit of resources up, even from our end. That being said, it needs to be a mutual partnership where everyone's coming to the table willing to contribute. So we've been working with Rep. Martinez, and I know on the state level there's an appropriation agree to maybe give it a update for. But also ASU is putting forth quite a bit of resources to match whatever comes in from the community. So we're in a match game at this point.
So Dr. Crow was very gracious, very, very gracious. And so what he wanted to do was be helpful to Pinal County. So Dr. Crow said, let's go ahead, let's see what kind of partnership. We needed to have an entity be a partnership. It couldn't just be a random, it couldn't just be just anybody. It needed to be a specific group to be a partnership with, who would spearhead it. And Dr. Crow was very generous and said that he would be willing to pony up some of the resources on the ASU's end. And I and Chris Lopez have asked for $500,000 in an appropriation, in which Dr. Crow said that he would take for now. If we could get that from the state, the state contributed 500,000, Dr. Crow would help us with the rest, and that would leave Pinal County with zero.
That is a very nice number. I like it.
For now, or at least, but that's
Yeah, I
the
think
plan.
I think the number is 1.3 million. So
Oh, from Pinal County?
for the whole project.
Oh, okay.
So million from $500,000 from ASU, $500,000 from the state, and then the 300,000 from the county.
Oh, I'd heard zero, but if you want to pony up some 300,000 for skin in the game, I'm good with that too.
So I guess the question to that one would be is, every city municipality, I can't even get it right. We would then try to put something together with them, is what we're trying to do, or is it looking at the county trying to pay for this all?
And I think the key question is also the data, because what I think that they're interested in is the data as the county, but then the data as the city of Coolidge, as the city of Casa Grande, as the city of Maricopa. And I think because it would be silly for us to put a Pinal County transportation plan and not have Coolidge participate, especially if there's a railroad line that wants to go through Coolidge that's going to be very, it's very promising in the future. And so I think that this is one of these things where, we wanted to kind of show you what we were thinking of. And I know Craig was very helpful in leading this, spearheading the Pinal partnership. And we thought that would be a good idea, since most everybody goes to the Pinal partnership, breakfasts, the meetings, the mornings, the luncheons, the panels. And so I think that was why we went that direction, and not necessarily with the direction of county, because no city likes, for the county to tell them what to do. Please.
Let me say something here
Please,
real quick.
please, correct me.
I think the county is the ones that will have the data from the cities and the county, as far as our GIS system will include subdivisions, all the infrastructure stuff actually does come into our GIS system. So I envision the county having to be a major player in this.
Absolutely.
In order to submit all of this data so you can make these assumptions and everything. You get, and I don't see it coming from any place else.
Well, I think municipalities have to participate as well.
Well, yeah, but we get their information. When they do a subdivision, it does show up on our tax rolls, on our GIS
I'm talking
systems.
about their all of their.
Oh, I understand, but what I'm saying is, it does house here at the county for the most part. I mean, the biggest chunk of that information, that data that they're going to need for this stuff, does eventually make its way into our GIS systems.
Well, it's going to take MAG, it's going to take ADOT, it's going to take
So it's Sun Corridor, it's going to take everybody.
So
Supervisor Good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Got it?
I've been in this job now for 8 years, and one of the biggest issues that we had in the San Juan Valley area that I also saw that's for the entire county as a whole is the lack of planning that we've had And to your point, I remember watching a program 10 years ago. My son had built it bigger. My son was very intrigued with it. And they had a complex, that they're very complex building that they were building. And they had several different construction companies, 3 different towers going up with a racing track going around it, and a huge platform that had a major park and everything else on it. And then the architect and a group of individuals built a software program that actually took day by day. They wanted to have it done in 3 years. And it took it day by day through the process. And one thing that came out of that was not only where they could do this, and they could do it in 3 years, but the problems. It foresaw what the problems were going to be, connecting it all together. And that was 10 years ago. And it's interesting that we're just looking and listening to this today, sitting here, and how valuable this is going to be. And to your point, I think every city in our county should have skin in the game. I think we should have skin in the game. And I, for one, am looking at this as a valuable tool. And so I know we're not making a decision today, but I think you've heard where I feel that we need to go forward with this.
Yeah, because the state needs to still give the $500,000 first.
Oh, yeah.
They're not signed to die yet.
Yeah, we're not saying that yet.
1.3 is just getting started.
And I get that. But you know what? That 1.3 will be well invested for the future and where we're headed.
And I think had we asked PRTA, we looked at having to step back and then hire somebody to do this. It was millions of dollars to have somebody else come up with it. And now we have the help of ASU. We can do this for a little less money, but I think get a better product even.
You know, we get
Technology alone has done so much.
Yeah.
We get into constantly on projects, solar projects, apartments, and things of that nature. We're trying to wrap our head around what we currently have, and we're trying to gather that data and bring it together. But when you look at something like this, we could have that instantly to show us what does that landscape look like? What's the roads necessary to get to these? And we've just not had that. And so this is so valuable.
Having said that, it's also very obsolete. By the time we get that money, you would have already improved it a couple more times and made it more impactful, I believe. I mean, I'm just figuring out CAD. And how long ago was that? We were looking at drawings on things just yesterday. I'm amazed by that sort of stuff. But the analytics is what you're paying for technology. Keep up. Gotta be quick.
Well, in the way we design things, the hardest step is that getting started, the base framework for it, because from that point on, it is highly dynamic. So if something came up, relatively last minute, like we can integrate it. We can just add that to the bigger systems that we've already merged together, and it can just kind of adapt and grow and be dynamic, whatever the needs of that time is.
And I love the fact that we can reimagine what a 505 would look like, or what a Hunt highway would look like, or what adding a train track would do to not only our road systems, but I love how they do the manufacturing, like what kind of jobs this would bring, what kind of and then what kind of housing that would bring, and what that land looks like. I was very impressed with ASU. Yeah, just get you $500,000.
Got the other half.
Yeah, let me check my purse.
And you got change. I see.
Chelsea, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a time limit set on this, but
Thank you.
all right. Got my equipment here, I see. All right, well, if there's no other information or questions about this presentation, please adjourn.